You can see the title over there, Unleashing Your Storytelling Superpower. Some years ago, I attended this session by the ICF, I think the International Coach Federation, and it was like, the short sessions where they have and they introduce some content and a speaker to you. And that speaker was none other than Bharat. Bharat, I know him because a family member of mine has worked with him, and so I've met him on a high and by basis, and we have spoken. But when I heard that particular session, I was blown over because the way that he actually spoke about the storytelling and the way he actually made it so simple, I thought I'd be a master overnight. I don't have to attend any of his sessions anymore. I tried and I failed miserably. The only stories I can tell are to my nephews and nieces. Snow White story and whatever, and I'm going to stop there. So what has happened is, Bharat, in his own words, he says that, workplaces have become very transactional. So he is committed to restore humanity to the workplace. And that's what he's going to show us by using storytelling as the method. Now, throughout his career, Bharat has been a habitual storyteller who has captivated his audiences with his wealth of experience. And now I know for the next 40 odd minutes he's going to captivate us too and also make us do some work. So be ready. Over to you, Bharat.
Thank you, Sharma. So, some of you may know that I was in Nepal recently, and Siva kept on reminding me to send me my video. And while I was there, one of my clients presented me a singing bowl, the Buddhist singing bowl. And she told me that this is not one of the ones that's perfect, made from the factory. It's an imperfect bowl done by some artisans. And Rizal, I want to tell you that there's beauty in imperfections, and there's a beautiful song in imperfection. And I have that bowl, and one day I'll demonstrate that to you. So, while I was reminded by Siva to share that video, I thought I'd share my observations on Nepal over the years. And I'm a morning person, but usually so when I'm traveling, because when I'm traveling, like many of you, I try to get up early, but many people don't. So having visited so many countries, I find Kathmandu to be very different from other cities. It's a morning city. So if you don't wake up early, you lose out on a lot of experiences. And most cities around the world come alive in the evening. So what happens when you wake up in the morning? There's a massive traffic jam, and the jam is caused by children going to school. And also public transport, buses and vehicles that pick up these children stop haphazardly on the road. But to me, it's a happy traffic jam. Because in Nepal, 90% of children get access to schooling, even up in the hills. And I tell them that if people get access to education, the future of the country is bright. So what else do you see in the morning? You'll see ladies dressed in beautiful red colors, looking very fresh, carrying flowers, and going for puja at one of the Hindu temples. And there are many Hindu temples in Kathmandu. You also see Buddhists chanting their way to offer their prayers to many stupas. And I tell myself, if the day begins with a prayer, the future of the country is bright. And the third thing I observe is that Kathmandu is a city that's surrounded by divinity. Has any of you been to Kathmandu?
I live there.
Fantastic. So you'll agree with me that there are gods everywhere. And if by chance you happen to throw a stone, chances are you'll hit a god. Would you agree, Dennis? Don't do that, because the whole city is surrounded. So if there's any empty space, they'll put a god there. So I tell them that your future is bright. because with education and prayer, you can go very far. So I happened to meet the minister called Minindra Rijal at the lobby of the hotel where I was staying, and he asked me for my observation. And I more or less, sorry. Okay, before that, let me just, the reason I'm telling you this is because this is a working definition of stories at work. So stories at work are facts wrapped in context, delivered with emotion. If I have to tell you that Kathmandu is a morning city, you will not remember. But I help you visualize it and I help you feel it. So when I was narrating my morning experience, I'm sure you could visualize it and you could feel. And the point I'm making is a story actually describes what happened. A good story makes you see what happened, and a great story makes you feel what happened. So coming back to the minister, he asked me like, what are your observations? And more or less, I told him what I saw, what I felt, and what I heard. And next morning, this is Amit, the manager of the hotel. He said, Bharat sir, they call you Bharat sir in Kathmandu. He said, Bharat sir, you know what happened last night? I said, no. He said, remember that minister you spoke to? He said, he repeated your story when he did the induction to all the MBA students. So if you tell a good story, chances are it will be repeated. And today, I picked up so many stories, and I've actually filled up my story bank. So one thing I like to encourage you is become a story collector. Fill up your story banks. I know all of us are busy filling up our money bank, and sometimes our money bank gets depleted. But a story bank will never be depleted. It will always be enhanced. So one encouragement that I have is every day before you go to sleep, at least put 5 stories in your story bank. I've collected about 10 today. So that's one request I have of you. In order for you to become a storyteller, you need to have your own stories to tell. And there are 3 kinds of stories. One is your stories, and those stories can never be taken away from you. The second bucket is stories that other people tell you. It's Rizal about that moment here. So you can repeat that. And the third, which we get by dozens every day, is stories from other sources like WhatsApp and stuff like that. But the best are your own stories. But if you are using the second and the third, please remember to acknowledge the source of the story. And some of us don't. And even with all my storytelling skills that I teach you, if you're not authentic, it's all wasted. So who would say they are a storyteller? If you think you are a storyteller, please raise your hand. Can you record this? Okay, one more time. Good, thank you. Normally I don't get that many hands. So there is this behavioral scientist called, not behavioral, evolutionary biologist called Robin Dunbar. You can Google the Robin Dunbar number here. Robin Dunbar basically says that in your lifetime, you have 150 connections. But I'm not going to talk about those 150 connections. I'm going to talk about an experiment that Robin Dunbar did. Robin had a few PhD students working for him, John. And he gave them a project. And the project was for them to go at social places and to listen to what people are doing socially. So where do you go? You go to mamak stalls, you go to coffee shops, you go to a mess, and you just listen. And then the students were asked to decode what they heard. And they learned, or rather Robin found out that 60% of the time, people were talking about something that happened to somebody. So what do you call that? Gossip. So Robin had a good definition of gossip. He says that gossip happens when you speak of someone and that someone is not part of the conversation. And is gossip good or bad? It could be both. It depends, correct. Who said depends? Correct. So if you have a nice thing to say, it's a good gossip. And I'm sure our dinner will say a nice thing about the Mike's ex-com, right? So that would be a good gossip. And some gossip would be, I wish they didn't talk about debrief. But to me, that's good gossip. So my question to you is there anybody here who doesn't gossip? Because one way of gossiping is by storytelling. So is there anyone here who doesn't gossip? So you'll agree with me that we are all storytellers, but my role here is to make you a storyteller at work. So I'm going to help elicit the stories that you have in you, teach you certain skills to tell it, so that as a leader, you become more engaging, more influencing, and more inspiring. And when it comes to communication, communication is a choice. And today, while listening to most of the speakers today, everybody exercised a choice in terms of how they wanted to communicate. And in order for me to demonstrate that, I'm actually going to show you a video. And when I show you that video, I want you to focus on two characters. And I think Christian Chua sort of made it easy for me because he made a reference to a guy called Scott who worked for NASA. So I also have a Scott who actually works for NASA Public Affairs. And the other gentleman is Sam Seaborn. So this is a series from this is an episode from a series called West Wing. And that particular episode is called Galileo 5. Now it's an important moment because that's a moment when the spacecraft lands on planet Mars. And the American president is about to go live to speak to 60,000 American children. And there's a bit of a rehearsal before he goes live. And while he's rehearsing, he's being advised by Scott and Sam. So I'll remind you again, Scott is a guy who does not wear specs, he's wearing a jacket, and he works for NASA Public Affairs. Sam Seaborn, who's wearing glasses, no jacket, is the presidential spokesperson. There are other characters in the video, but don't worry too much about it. I want you to focus on these two characters. And don't worry too much about the English bit, just pick up the gist, and I've also put some subtitles to help you because it may not be great quality.
Who wrote this intro?
I did.
Yes, public affairs.
Yep. You mind if I give it a polish? Is there a problem?
No, it's great. You mind if I change it?
I prefer if you didn't.
Just the same.
Public affairs has cleared the text. If it's going to be changed, I prefer if the president changed it.
See, that's kind of what he pays me to do, so.
Look, I don't want to step on your toes. You don't want to step on mine. We're both writers.
Yes, I suppose, if we brought the definition to those who spell.
Excuse me?
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. President.
So this is the crew from NASA Public Affairs.
How you doing?
So we're going to run you through the drill for tomorrow morning. First of all, you'll be flanked on either side by the Flight Operations Manager David Narakawa and NASA Chief Administrator Dr. Peter Jobson. On either side of them will be Dr. Samuel Thurman of the Meteorite Analysis Team from the Johnson Space Center and Dr. Joyce Gray Sutton, Planetary Geologist from Cal State Northridge. On these monitors, you'll be seeing the images beamed back from the surface, and on this computer screen, you'll be able to read the questions being sent in by the kids. I strongly urge you,
Yes.
I strongly urge you,
I know.
Mr. President, to act as a moderator and pass the questions off to one of the experts on the panel rather than answer it yourself.
Yes.
Would you like to see some of the questions?
We have questions in advance.
Some of them, would you put them up?
Sure. Katie, 6th grader, Green Oaks Junior High School, Austin, Texas, asked, how old is the planet Mars? That's a great question, Katie. The planet Mars is 4.6 billion years old.
What did I just say?
I knew that.
Nobody likes a know-it-all.
Yes, God forbid that while talking to 60,000 public school students, the president should appear smart.
That's fine, just don't show off.
I don't show off. Stevie, 4th grader, PS31, Manhattan, asked, what is the temperature on Mars? Well, Stevie, if one of our expert panelists were here, they would tell you the average temperature ranges from 15 degrees to minus 140.
That happens to be wrong. It ranges from 60 to minus 225.
I converted it to Celsius in my head.
Thank you.
Can I see the intro?
It's up on the prompter.
Good morning. I'm speaking to you live from the West Wing of the White House. Today, we have a very unique opportunity to take part live in an extremely historic event which, whoa, boy.
How you doing, Mr. President?
Who wrote this intro?
I did, sir. I'm Scott Tate from NASA Public Affairs.
Scott, unique means one of a kind. Something can't be very unique, nor can it be extremely historic.
While we're at it, do we have to use the word live twice in the first two sentences like we just cracked the technology?
Look.
We're also broadcasting in living color, right?
Sam,
Yeah.
he's gonna make some changes.
Did you get a clear with that?
I got it.
Read this. Good morning. 11 months ago, a 1,200-pound spacecraft blasted off from Cape Canaveral, Florida. 18 hours ago, is it 18 hours ago? We're on the air at noon Eastern.
Yeah.
18 hours ago, it landed on the planet Mars. You, me, and 60,000 of your fellow students across the country, along with astroscientists and engineers from the Jet Propulsion Lab in Southern California, NASA Houston, and right here at the White House, we're going to be the first to see what it sees, and to chronicle the extraordinary voyage of an unmanned ship called Galileo 5.
He said it right.
So obviously, there's a difference between the two, right? Yeah. So my first question to you is, what was the reaction of the president when Scott spoke? What did he say? Who wrote this intro? There was resistance. What was the reaction when Sam spoke? How did the president react? He got it right. How often do we get that feedback when we do our presentations to our bosses? Who do you think has more facts? Scott or Sam? Okay, the one who says Scott, raise your hand. Very good. Happy, what facts did Scott have? What? Can somebody help Happy? What facts did Scott have? That's a trick question actually. Scott was actually bullshitting. But I introduced Scott as a NASA spokesperson, and all of you assume that he's an expert and he knows all the stuff. So even by just introducing him, you already made a judgment. But in reality, it was Sam who had all the facts. 11 months ago, 12,000 pounds, landed 18 hours ago, 60,000 American children, Cape Canaveral. Stories are facts, wrapped in context, delivered with emotion. So while Scott was speaking, what was your reaction? One or two words? Like when he was speaking to you as a listener, like how did you feel? What was your response? Cold, yes. What else? Louder, louder. Thank you. Cold, what else?
BS.
Sorry?
BS.
BS, bullshit, yes. I'm allowed to use those words after debrief. Thank you for the permission. Yeah, BS. What else? Dato, Vicks, what was your reaction when Scott was speaking? Boring. So, we do this all over the world, and we pick up the words and we put it on cloud. And this is typically, okay, I'll show you. These are the kind of response you get. And may not be very different from what you have just told me, right? So what happened when Sam was speaking? What did you feel, Terry, when Sam was speaking?
Very emotional.
And did you feel?
Yes.
Very good. What else when Sam was speaking? Connection. You felt connected? It was about us. Did you feel that you were part of the audience? Yes. Fantastic. And this is the kind of words you get when Sam speaks. So Scott actually spoke the language of expertise. And Johan is Johan. Sam spoke the language of leadership. Very inclusive. About us. And when we are speaking, you could visualize and you could feel. And that's how leaders speak. Most of us are used to speaking the language of expertise. And I tell you, it's easy. when I talk about choice, communication is a choice. So you can start by making a statement that we have a problem in this country. There is a leadership deficit. There's nothing wrong in it. At least you know what you're sort of speaking about. And then you'll have some generalization. Generalization with chronology. Like Wendy said, no, 23, 7, some number, right? First 23 years, I think I have the number. 23, 7 and 20. Fantastic. Normally people don't remember numbers, but you guys are great. Or unless you're referring to the notes. But a lot of people at least say chronology, the first 5 years I did it, but that's also okay, it's a choice. But Sam Seaborn started with that, but it quickly took you to moments. And if I were to sort of reflect back on the conversation you had with the wonderful authors, when I think of Siva, I think of him punching the moneylender. There was a moment I could visualize because he took on that challenge. Prasad, very noisy Starbucks, and the book still speaks louder than the noise you are surrounded with. When I think of Johan, I think of the serene moment. But one thing, if I can coach you in public, I wish there was nobody from Sirim here, because you said Sirim paid and Rizal, I did it free for you. The client would be very upset. But that's okay. Okay, keep it in this room. Whatever happens in this room stays in this room.
What room only?
It's recorded.
And of course, the Aladdin lamp. And I think you were awesome, because I was actually I was listening to your stories. So that's what people do. So next I'm going to talk about, I think this is where we all make mistakes, that we don't know what's a story and what's not a story. So if you look at Christian Chua this morning, he talk about spotting the tells. So when you're negotiating, how do you pick up moments? But how do you know that you are listening to a story or you are telling a story? And most people are actually talking about stories, but they're not telling. So if you are storytelling, that you must be able to show. You must be able to help the audience visualize and the audience to feel. And how do you do that? So chances are, if somebody says that, last night I was working till 12 o'clock trying to sort out Dr. Lawrence's charts, I knew there was a story coming from Siva. So a story must have a time marker. So if somebody says, let me tell you what happened on Valentine's Day, chances are, this does not guarantee a story, but chances are story coming up. Like in your case, the minute Johan said, I remember, in that moment in Sirim, and somebody walked up to me and he said, have you written a story? And I knew, have you written a book, correct? And I knew there was a story coming up. So, or alternately, there could be a place marker. Like, let me tell you my observations on Nepal. Or I was at the lobby of the hotel. So when you are consciously telling a story, please use the storytelling elements. So one of the elements is a time marker and a place marker. And why do you think this is important? Because as a speaker or in a business context, there's a lot of trust deficit and we're all fighting for credibility. So when you put these details of time and place, chances are the story is credible. You're not making it up. And I'm going to tell you something else, but I'll tell it now because I'll forget. Now imagine it's a Monday morning in the office and somebody says that I'm going to tell you a story. In a business meeting on a Monday morning, what's your immediate response going to be? Long-winded. This is a business meeting, you don't have time for stories. And no time for entertainment, get to the point. So one tip I like to give you before I forget is don't use the S word. So share an experience, share a moment, but don't say that I'm going to tell you a story. Because story, as we have been taught, is a world of imagination. So when we were in school, the more we imagine, the higher the marks we got. But in business, they don't encourage us to do that because storytelling in business has a negative perception. That the guy has not done his homework, He's probably going to apacharita vidu. Remember, sometimes you say that?
Yeah.
So what's the story for not delivering? So one tip is, don't use the S word. So therefore, you got to work twice harder to be credible. So one is shared. So I didn't start by saying that, let me tell you my Nepal story. I said, let me tell you when I woke up in the morning. But I actually told you a story without telling you that I'm telling you a story. So stories in business are invisible. Okay, so time marker, place marker. The second bit is, there's a sequence of events so that it helps you visualize. So 11 months ago, it took off 1,200 pounds. 11 hours ago, it landed. So there's a sequence of events. So when you are telling a story, again, I think some of you did that brilliantly. Because when you put those details in, it helps you visualize that what's happening. And it's easier for the listener to listen. Next bit is character. A story must have characters, but because you got a short lifespan, attention span, not lifespan, I apologize. But that's also true in some cases. But what I meant was, you got a short attention span. And therefore, focus on two characters. If your story has got too many characters, by the time the thing finishes, you forget who did what to whom. Alright? So I like Jaga. Jaga spoke about his managing director. And he had to take on after that managing director. Thank God he didn't mention the name of the MD. So I got a bit of advice here that please mention the name of the character. Because that makes it again credible. If you just say I met the head of L&D or whatever, it does not make it credible. Mention the name. Now my advice to you is that if you got to say something good about someone, mention the name of the person. But if you have something not too nice to say about, say, the managing director who took that additional 15 minutes, don't mention his name, but make up a name. He said, look, I don't remember the name of the managing director, but let's call him Abdul. So your story becomes authentic. And mention the actual conversation that happens. Don't interpret the conversation. Like Prem, sir, do you know what happened last time? The minister repeated your story in the induction. So I didn't filter it, I didn't process it. All of us have a tendency to filter it and process it. So this is what makes it distinct. So far so good? Now the next bit is, tell me something interesting, no? Tell me something unexpected. You have taken 2 minutes of my time, you've taken 3 minutes of my time, but tell me something that I don't know. And some of you again did that beautifully, about there were some unexpected moments. Jaga comes to my mind when he had to take control. When he went with all his enthusiasm, the response was 0. But there was something unexpected. You didn't expect that kind of response. So in my case, again, my unexpected moment was that the minister actually repeated my story. Not only that, somebody from the institute got in touch with me and said, Bharat, can we collaborate? So that's the power of a story. When I talk about unleashing, you have no idea what happens after you tell your story. It takes its own sort of journey. So far so good, but in business this is not good enough. In business is, you must have a point. So if you are telling a story, it's not storytelling for the sake of storytelling. Because as a speaker or in business, we don't storytell to entertain. And again, coming back to you, Jagat, you debriefed the learnings beautifully. Why you need to energize. Suddenly the whole concept of energizer takes a very different meaning. But not many people do that. So again, that was my story bank, that there's a hidden nice meaning behind energizer. Are we good so far?
Yes.
And let me tell you that storytelling as a concept is very easy to understand. But as a behavior, it's not that easy. So I like you to make a note of this, that if there's a time marker, place marker, sequence of events, some characters, a conversation happening, something that is unexpected, and a point to be made, chances are you are listening to a story. Otherwise you are talking. So if any of us claim to be a storyteller, this is one of the filters you should use. You may not have all, but at least some of it. How am I doing for time?
You have 10 minutes.
Wow. Okay, so perfect. So I got about 40 minutes. No, you know that, right? Yeah, thank you. I teach a lot of storytelling patterns, but today I'm going to introduce to you to one storytelling pattern, which is the connection story pattern. And the point I wanted to make is people are genuinely interested in people. So when you meet somebody for the very first time, the person is actually interested to know a bit about you. And you know, someone said that people don't care about how much you know. First, they want to find out whether you are caring enough. And as a speaker, similar thing happens to us. You know, we think that people are going to appreciate our competence and all that, but when you start speaking, the thought that comes to the mind, okay, what kind of a person is this? What's his character like? Is it worth my time? And we normally get persuaded by people who are like us. And there are two parts to a connection story. Number one is, tell your listeners a story about what makes you tick. So again, coming back to Johan, what makes him tick is he really wants to do something for the leadership of this country. And then also show a little bit like he's like us, and he says, to be a servant leader, you don't need a title or you don't need a chair. You have an opportunity to serve wherever you are. Am I right, Johan? Is that what you're trying to say? Correct? And I use this all the time. So whenever when I'm invited to speak, my biggest challenge is not my content, it's my first 5 minutes. Because if I don't get the first 5 minutes right, I think people will just switch off. So, Tuan Haji Muir, if you remember the first time we met, Roshan wanted me to meet Tuan Haji, and he arranged for me to meet Tuan Haji at the Bangsa shopping complex. And I was not at my best. I think I was wearing chappals, something, and Tuan Haji thought, who's this guy like, you know, so he was sort of ignoring me. Focusing more. Roshan has got that expertise, credibility and all. So Roshan keeps on nudging me, he said, I invited you to speak to Tuan Haji, why don't you sort of speak to him? Then I made a statement. I told Tuan Haji, if next time Tenaga National increases its tariff, I will not complain. And that got Tuan Haji's attention. And he said, Bharat, why are you saying that? So I said, Tuan Haji, last week I spoke at the Sustainable Brand Conference, and Shah Nawaz from your Corporate Affairs Department was also one of the speakers. And he told me two things that I'll always remember. And he told me that certain parts of Borneo, which still does not have full access to electricity, and Tenaga has made it its mission to supply electricity to all Malaysians. And sometimes they can't even afford electricity bill, but they still get the electricity. And you know how much life gets impacted when you get access to electricity. Kampong Kuantan, you know the clip, fireflies, the homes are paid not to use electricity. Tenaga pays them not to use electricity. And I told Tuan Haji that if my money, that the tariff, extra tariff that I pay goes to help those people in Borneo and to preserve fireflies in the country, I don't mind paying that. I mean that, Tuan Haji. So while in Nepal, I had a few clients where I spoke at the largest bank in Nepal called the Rashtriya Banijya Bank Limited, 57 years old bank, government owned. And same thing, my first 5 minutes. And I told them about, I said, when I'm speaking to you, I'm reminded of a talk I gave to the management trainees at the Association of Banks in Malaysia. And I shared with them a little bit about myself. I come from a place called Salandar near Jasin. Jasin is Ghaffar Baba's constituency, our former Deputy Prime Minister. Due to circumstances, my dad could not do schooling, and being the eldest in the family, he had to run a small business to support his brothers, sisters, and a growing family. And not being educated, he had problems managing his cash flow, and he was always worried. But his hero was the bank manager, branch manager of Bank Bhumiputra in Jhansi. Every time my dad had a problem, the branch manager would help him out. He'll teach my dad simple cash flow techniques, credit, debit. Sometimes he'll hold on to suppliers' checks till the money comes in. And little by little, my father's business grew, and he could invest in getting his 4 children educated. And I told these people that yours is a very noble profession. If you do it well, you can actually change people's lives. I also told them about Tun Ismail Ali, who at that time used to sit on the board of Unilever, but he was also the former governor of the Reserve Bank of Malaysia. And sometimes he'll take a newspaper home, but he'll leave his 40 cents on the table to give it to Mary, saying that please give it to HR because I'm taking government property home. Many a times he'll attend conferences all over the world so that he could bring best practices to Malaysia. And in those days there was a delegation that went to Japan for an ADB conference. And those days people used to buy duty-free cameras in Japan. That time Malaysia was not duty-free. So the whole Reserve Bank, Tun Ismail Ali didn't buy, he found it very expensive. But when the delegation landed at Subang, being a Reserve Bank delegation, they were not subjected to a custom check. Tun Ismail Ali went to the custom officer and said that take duty from all these people because they're carrying cameras. I mean, that's the kind of governorship our country had. And it is said that during his tenure, because his integrity was so strong, the ringgit never faltered. Now can you imagine what the audience would have felt when I told them this? They stayed on. I mean the CEO and the deputy CEO who was supposed to just introduce me to and go, they stayed on till the very end. Not only that, they hosted a dinner for me. And it's not because of my other content, I think it was because of my 5 minutes. Because your character trumps your credentials. Now, if I may, let's do a simple exercise, because like I said, storytelling as a concept is very easy, but as a behavior, it's a bit difficult. Can I take additional 5 minutes so we can do a good demo? Yeah? Thank you. So this is what we do, okay? So, I like you to think of 3 things that have shaped who you are today. And some of you were daring enough to say that on the stage. Sharin, you at least spoke some beautiful moments, defining moments in your life. So I like you to think of 3 moments. I don't want you to write it down or just put a word or 2. Like in my case was access to education. Because education gave me a choice in terms of friends or social life that I have, and also in terms of the work that I could choose. If you have education, you have choices in life. The other one is my employer, because my employer allowed me to fruit. So I think my parents gave me the seeds and the education, and my employer allowed me to fruit by going to so many countries. So can you do that? Just take about half a minute. You can't think of 3, at least think of 1 or 2 moments. Easy, right? Okay, next. I want you to just pick up 1. Out of the 3 events, pick up 1 that you are willing to share privately with somebody. So it could be a childhood, could be your first love, could be a relationship broken, could be your first job. But these are defining moments in your lives. Because had that moment not happened, you will not be where you are today. Alright, now I'm not too sort of particular about the content. I'm quite keen that you apply the storytelling framework. Now what I like you to do is that I like you to pair up with someone with whom you have not had a chance to shake hands. Walk out to somebody whom you have not had a chance to meet today. And I know there are so many of us, I'm sure there is somebody with whom you have not connected. Yeah, so, and use this whole room, and I want it to be a private conversation. So all you need to do is share that moment. So it could be Like I told you that my Ben Bhumiputra moment, or it could be how connection stories have helped me grow my work. So just pick up any one moment, go to a neighbor, and basically this is what you start saying that, look, my name is Happy. I'd like to share you about da 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 da. Finish it, take about 2 minutes, and the other person just listens, and then after 2 minutes, change. Listen to the other person. So basically, it's a practice in terms of a connection story, so that the other person gets to know you a little better as a human being. I think all of us wear a competence hat, and I think we'll get to know more about it. We'll hear a lot about it on social media as well. But this is a wonderful opportunity for you to connect with someone with whom you're not connected before. And the other good thing is, it's always easy to speak to a stranger. It's a bit difficult to speak to somebody whom you know very well, so both of you don't speak to each other. So I like you to go as far as possible from Penang. Yeah, go all the way south to Johor Bahru.
Go Singapore better.
Yeah, go to CJ. Okay, so the first team is you two, okay? CJ and Kish. Penang, Antara, Penang, then Singapore. So understand, I want you to just take a minute or two to prepare your story, and just take some time to say, take about 2 minutes each, one defining moment in your life. Are we good?
Yes.
Any questions?
Yes.
Do you need to prepare your story? I think you should be ready to say. Okay, can you all sort of stand up? And I really want you to walk. Don't be lazy and just pick up that person you see the first time. I mean, think of someone you want to get to know. Come on, come on. At times like this, I miss Zoom and virtual. Because if I'm in virtual world, I can close the breakout room. But now I can't. But jokes apart, did any of you look at the watch? No. And did you feel that the time I gave you was not sufficient?
Yes.
And to be honest, I gave you more than 4 minutes. But Nick, come up here. Nick was taking a lot of photographs. So my question to Nick is, what did you notice when you were taking this photograph, Nick?
When you guys when you guys tell each other stories, you guys starting to leaning towards each other and then mirroring each other. Some of you maybe not notice that, but
yeah, thank you. And Nick got enough evidence. But Christian Chua spoke about body language. But in storytelling, it happens naturally. And he's got enough evidence where people are actually leaning towards each other. And not only that, they were even mirroring each other. Tuan Haji Mior and Madam, both of you actually had your hands on the table. It was a mirror image of each other. And some of you were sort of sitting on a table and crossing your legs. You did that as well. Some of you put hands in the pocket. We have all those photographs. Did you feel connected? Now, normally I don't do this, but I'm going to take the liberty of asking one of you to volunteer to tell your story so that you'll get a benefit of me coaching you a bit. It takes a lot of courage, but if there's a volunteer who would like to share the same story that you shared, and fantastic. Give him a hand. You might come up. Can we have a? And whom are you speaking to? Whom are you speaking to? Jai, do you mind coming? So Faisal, you come up. Please, sir, if you don't mind. And I want you to just repeat what you told him. Okay, so no background needed, nothing. I just want you to do action, replay. You don't need this, you just listen.
Can you hear me right?
Okay, all those who are listening, also want you to give feedback. And the feedback is very simple. Did he use the storytelling framework? Time marker, place marker, sequence of events, character, something unexpected. If you don't do the business point, it's okay, sir, because it's your first round, so I'll not insist. But don't go too much on the content, right? This is a practice in terms of how to tell a story. So no comments on the content, okay? Over to you.
Okay, Jay, almost 30 years ago, I was working as a power plant engineer. I got so bored in the power plant, I started to dream of working offshore in the oil field service industry. And I had applied so many times, almost on a weekly basis, to this one particular company. And not only I was rejected, I didn't get any response. Until a friend of mine who has a sister that works in Petronas asked me one day, "You really want this job?" I said, "Yes." So she said, "Okay, tomorrow you come, give me your best CV and see what I can do about it." So I didn't know what she did about it. And about 4 months later, I get a call. In fact, a telegram to come for an interview with that company. That telegram, if you still remember. I went for the interview and I said, bloody hell. Because in the morning you do we did all the IQ tests. I think those who have been in, you know what you do first. And afternoon we had a verbal interview where we meet one-to-one. And I was kept till past 5 p.m. I said, bloody hell, why is this guy playing with me? Sure, because I know that people who are highly qualified got there, right? So everyone gone home. So I was still, I don't know what's happening to me. So the guy called me and said, so I got even to the last. So I said, why, you want to fire me? You do going to hire me? I said, no. I said, no, the other guy got first class, but you got third class. So I said, I'm not going to get a job. I didn't say so. Right? So from 5:15, what happened was the interview went on until 7 something. And he said, you want to go home? I said, yeah, so what? He said, just go home, wait. Right? But long story short, history, I got a job. And once I got a job, I asked him, so why you call me? Why you give me the job? So he said, I like your persistence.
Fantastic. Give him a clap. So you can sit down, let Faisal be on the stage.
No, rock star.
Alright, feedback. Time marker?
Yes.
Place marker?
Yes.
I wish you had mentioned the name of the power plant. Which was the power plant?
Forgot.
Plant is Station Janakuasa Sultan Ismail Pakar, which have been
No,
decommissioned.
so had you mentioned that, would have made it credible, okay? Sequence of events? But you should have mentioned the name of your friend.
Okay, the person's name is Ainul Jamal
See,
Ainul Azhar,
he has it.
who is the current director in Petronas.
So imagine, had you mentioned the name, sequence of events was there, credibility. Okay, and then you played it up beautifully. What was the element of surprise, unexpected? He had third class. And he was kept longer and longer and waiting. Now for those who were listening, what do you think was the point he was trying to make? Sorry? Wow, beautiful. What did you say? So, one of the points he's trying to make is, in order to get your job, your paper qualification is no guarantee. It's your character that's going to guarantee you a job. And it was my persistence that got me my job, not the first class. Where do you think he can use this story? At the induction program. Imagine he's the head of department and he's got these young trainees. Some of them have been on a scholarship from Europe or from US with a chip on their shoulder because they are from foreign universities and they are the cherry on the cake of JPA, and he wants to get them grounded. And he said, fine, you all speak good English and all that, but let me tell you a bit about organizations. While that's important for you to get into the company, from now on, your character will trump your credentials. Okay, now those of you who are listening, what do you think of Faisal as a human being? When he tells this story to you, what do you think of his character, sir? How would you interpret his character? Because you are meeting him for the first time, right? So when he was telling you this, what do you think of him as a human being, as a person? What are some of those words that come to your mind? He's humble, genuine person. Isn't that beautiful? You know, sometimes the way we speak reveals a lot about who we are. He didn't say I'm humble, he didn't say I'm genuine, but that's how. And imagine as a speaker, as a trainer, when you come and you speak and the person finds out a bit about you, it may not be perfect, but at least something closer to who you are. Thank you. Give him another clap.
Just
So-
a little bit, I got a job in 8 months.
Fantastic. So remember, guys, it's always your character that trumps your credentials. Many a time when I'm introducing ourselves, we focus a lot on our credentials, but it's all there in the social media, and people don't spend 400 ringgit to listen to your credentials. They are here to get to know you as a human being, as a person. Correct? And the shortest distance between two people is a story. And a little bit about me in closing. I'm really grateful. I come from a very small village in Salanda, where when I was born there was no electricity, there was no water supply. So my childhood memory, I remember those moments. Born in Melaka, GH, and Unilever took me to 73 countries. And when I reflect back, I think I survived not because I was competent in my work, I was good with people. I always put people before work. And I believe that if you take care of people, your business is safe. And unfortunately, when I go around the world today, I realize that people are getting more and more competent. Our education system, our training programs are making us good in our work, but we are hopeless with people. We get upset very fast, we leave bosses, we can't take stress, we panic, we have suicidal tendencies, and I think there's an opportunity to restore humanity to the workplace. Because if you don't find fulfillment at work, it's your family that bears the brunt, and it's your friends that bear the brunt. So my purpose is to help leaders to be more engaging, more influencing, more inspiring. And these are skills that can easily be learned. All you need is a little bit of empathy and a little bit of love in your heart. And the rest, I'll teach. Thank you very much. And my biggest challenge was to keep Scott in the room because he's so tired. He was working till 4 o'clock in the morning, and I asked him to stay for 5 minutes, and he stayed on throughout. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Bharat. Thank you so much for living up to what I requested and what you said you do
Those
as
are
well.
my details.
Yeah, excellent.